Hi guys, welcome back. Today I am doing the outbreak of World War I. Now, a lot of this is background information to how the United States responded to World War I, but it's kind of important that you know it. One of the major things here, coming off of last week's chapter, that you need to understand is imperialism combined with industrialization led to extreme nationalism around the world, and nationalism almost always leads to war. Okay, extreme nationalism. So that's a really important concept. So number one, you've got the quest for raw materials and market, which is imperialism. As you can see, much of the world, especially Asia and Africa, were completely controlled by European powers. You notice that South America is the only area that's not really controlled, but remember that the United States basically holds control over South America through dollar diplomacy and moral diplomacy. Secondly, is militarism. All right, modern industrial weapons that are mass produced thanks to industrialization and are more deadly than weapons have ever been. Throughout most of history, weapons that man had could kill no more than maybe 10 people at a time, if that, and that was when cannons came around. Swords and arrows obviously couldn't kill that many people, but now they have devastating weapons, and all of the major powers in the world were accumulating these weapons. A big one that's new at this time is the battleship, steel, massive ships that have a lot of power. Again, nationalism, extreme nationalism, always leads to war. That cartoon at the bottom there is a very famous cartoon to show the outbreak of nationalism in Europe at this time, which is going to lead to the outbreak of war. And then finally, the alliance system. Germany and Austria-Hungary had made a major alliance. They were known as the Central Powers. And eventually, Italy and the Ottoman Empire, once the war breaks out, will join. Italy will change sides. France, in trying to balance this, made an alliance with Russia, and Great Britain decided to jump in with France and Russia. This is, again, why George Washington argued, don't get involved in entangling alliances, or you will get pulled into European wars. These four major causes together are usually referred to as MAIN: militarism, alliance system, imperialism, nationalism. Okay, it's a great way to look at the long-term causes of World War I. All right, short-term causes is the assassination of Franz Duke Ferdinand by Gavrilo Princip. Once again, nationalism. It was Serbian nationalism. It was a small group of really kind of Keystone Cop assassins, but they got lucky. And as you can see, the Archduke's car pulled right up next to Gavrilo Princip, pulled out a gun, shot both him and his wife. And this is going to be the spark that leads to the war. So how did the war start? This is possibly one of the greatest stories, and this is why you don't get involved in entangling alliances. Serbia, who wanted their full independence from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, murders the Archduke. Austria-Hungary wants to punish Serbia. However, Serbia is the longtime ally of Russia. Russia warns Austria-Hungary, don't be mean to our Serbian friends. Germany, who's allied with Austria-Hungary, says, Russia, what are you doing mobilizing? All they're doing is helping, punishing Serbia for what they did. And Germany then turns around and attacks France. And France is like, what the heck did we do? Okay. This all led to because of the Van Schlieffen plan. The German plan for 30 years had been to quickly attack France through neutral Belgium, get France out of the war, and then turn around and defeat the Russians. Once they attacked neutral Belgium, that brought Britain in, and all of a sudden, a single assassination threw the entire continent into war. Now, here's where we get to U.S. history. How did we respond? Woodrow Wilson said, neutral in heart and mind. All right. Again, George Washington, guys, that's a great cartoon in the bottom corner there, casts a long shadow over U.S. foreign policy. He had always said, don't get involved with European affairs. Don't get involved in entangling alliance. Wilson kept us out of war for over 2.5 years. Now, on the flip side, as what this cartoon right next to me says, is we continued to supply all the sides that we could with ammunition. So that's starting to draw us in Our want for market during a war is going to slowly get us in, and this is going to lead to sinking of ships, which Mr. Irvin will talk to you about. But remember, from 1914 to 1917, strict neutrality, okay? In 1916, as you can see, Wilson actually ran for president again on the premise that he kept us out of war and that there was peace in America. And then finally, what is World War I going to be? Pure and simple, World War I is mass murder, guys. It is trench warfare. The trenches were horrible to live in. The soldiers on a daily basis had to deal with anything from massive rats to trench foot to gas attacks to modern weapons that could kill multiple people. The most deadly weapon of World War I was the machine gun. 75% of all casualties were caused by a machine gun. The general tenor of the war was that hundreds of thousands of men would get up out of their trenches, charge the other side. The other side would open up with their machine guns. They would kill a lot of people. They would retreat, and then the other side would get out of their trenches and do the same thing. This ultimately is the war. No man's land was a place where few people survived. The average length that a soldier survived in World War I on the front was 30 days. And mainly this is due to the weapons of modern war, by land, by sea, and by air. For the first time, airplanes take part in warfare. Airplanes had only been invented 11 years earlier. Airplanes went to mapping out trenches, to having dogfights, and occasionally dropping bombs onto trenches. You had flamethrowers, you had gas attacks, which were devastating and were declared illegal after World War I. And then you had submarines, which are going to be incredibly important because the submarines are ultimately what's going to draw the United States into the war, as Mr. Irvin will explain. And then finally, as I said, 75% of all casualties in World War I were caused by machine guns. It was a brutal, deadly war that was followed up by a pandemic, something that you guys are fairly aware of at this point. And this was a horrible time, not only in the United States, but throughout Europe and the rest of the world. Okay, see you guys.